Voting in the general election starts in 19 days. Meet the candidates in 2 of the races for Pima County Supervisor. Then, an update on Tucson Electric Power's effort to raise rates. This is Metro Week. We're focusing on 2 of the 4 county supervisor races this week. In District 2, incumbent Democrat Ramon Valadez will win a 4th full term because no one is running against him. In Districts 1 and 3, the incumbents have challengers. We'll meet the candidates after the week's news.
Federal officials cut the ribbon on Tucson International Airport's new air traffic control tower this morning. The Federal Aviation Administration's new tower sits on the southwest side of the main runway and stands about twice as tall as the old tower. The tower is also built to be environmentally friendly, including a 1,600-panel solar farm. Those features meant the tower's first electric bill came out to about $30. The old tower and its neon lettering will stay standing to greet travelers as they fly into town. The Tucson City Council unanimously voted to raise bus fares this week. The plan calls for the full cash fare to go up from $1.50 to $1.75. The economy fare for low-income riders will increase from 50 cents to 60 cents. The original plan called for the increases to take effect October 16th. That's been now delayed until January 1st. Supporters of the increased fares say they're necessary to help ensure a balanced city budget for the 2017 fiscal year. A federal court refused today to block Arizona's new law prohibiting ballot harvesting. The judge rejected the Arizona Democratic Party's request to put the new law on hold, saying there's no proof it would have a negative effect on voting. The law, passed by the legislature earlier this year, makes it a felony to return someone else's early ballot. Exceptions are made for family members and caregivers. Republicans say the law is needed to prevent voter fraud, though no cases of that type of voter fraud have ever been found in the state. For more on all of these stories, you can visit our website.
The race in Pima County Supervisors District 3 could determine the board's political majority. District 3 is the largest in Pima County, including the Tohono O'odham Nation, Ajo, and the western edges of the Tucson metro area. Sharon Bronson is the incumbent. The Democrat has served 20 years on the board. She touts her focus on economic development and past or present leadership on several boards in the region, including the economic development agency called Sun Corridor, the Visitors Bureau, and the County Supervisors Association of Arizona. Republican Kim DeMarco is challenging Bronson and has focused her campaign on improving infrastructure and reducing taxes and county spending. She says Bronson's leadership on the Board of Supervisors is a burden for county residents, that the board turns too often to tax increases, and that it's time for a change. We aim to interview candidates in contested races together at the same time, but we were unable to do that this week because of scheduling challenges. So I sat down with Sharon Bronson and Kim DeMarco separately. First, my interview with Bronson. Supervisor Bronson, thanks for coming in. Your website features prominently your past efforts and successes at economic development planning. What still needs to be done?
Well, I think obviously we've got the momentum behind us, and we put together Pima Prospers, and we have our economic development plan. Everything the county is doing now, whether it's Pima Prospers in terms of comprehensive planning or anything that feeds into our health care, it's all focused on how we get the biggest bang for our buck, making it fit in with our economic development plan. So I think what we need to do right now in terms of economic development is continue along the path we've taken, work with the other jurisdictions, develop the 3P partnerships, the public-private partnerships that brought us Accelerate, that brought us Worldview, that brought us Caterpillar, and I think there's more good news to come. So keep pushing in the same direction, everybody pulling in the same direction from the public and private sector, and I think we've seen that momentum building, and I think we need to continue it.
And I want to have you respond to your opponent's top issue, which is cutting the spending in Pima County. Do you think she's offering good options?
I haven't seen what options she's offered. She just says cut spending. She doesn't identify where she'd like to cut spending. We have a $1.1 million budget. Of that, we collect about $350 million in property tax. That's the only place we can cut. The others are designated funds, they're restricted funds. They have to be used for the intended purpose. So I'd like her to tell me where with the $350 million she's going to cut. Is she going to cut law enforcement? Is she going to close libraries? Is she going to close parks? I think that we've cut taxes by $32 million this year because of the lawsuit we prevailed at with the state. She was against us doing the lawsuit, so I think it speaks for our differences.
Also on the financial lines and budget lines, the state has passed some costs from the state budget down to the county budget in recent years, and the county supervisors have passed those to taxpayers. What is the best way to approach the legislature on that issue next year?
And I think just so people are aware, of the taxes that you pay to Pima County, we have to send a third of it back up to the state. That is money that should stay in Pima County. So I think there are a couple of approaches to trying to change that pattern. And number one is to work with the County Supervisors Association and the Arizona Association of Counties to put pressure on the legislature for them to step up and do their job and pay their own bills and not let us pay for them. And I think the other thing we can do as a community is register our displeasure to our state legislatures about this shifting cost. We've got to start investing in infrastructure. We've got to start investing in our community. We don't need to send our money to Maricopa County and to Phoenix. It needs to stay where the people who pay for it, benefit from it.
On infrastructure, there's a constant need for more road repair in Pima County. Where do you get the money, aside from what you're talking about with the state?
I think that the Pima County road issue is a regional issue. It's certainly a state issue. We have the same issue with states in the road. We have the same issue nationally. We have not, as a nation, as a state and as a region, invested in our infrastructure in any significant way over the last 2.5 decades. We pay for most of our road maintenance, for most of our capacity building, for transit with highway user revenue funds, state shared revenue funds. The gas tax hasn't risen since the early 1990s. We're driving fewer miles, cars are getting better mileage. So we're going to have to step up and understand we've got to pay for it. I think that one of the ways we can do it, and this is, as I said, it's not only a Pima County problem, it's a Pima County region problem. One of the ways we can do this is through the RTA. We've already adopted a 1/2-cent sales tax. We can go back to the state legislature and ask for permission to take it back to the voters to see if we can use some of that revenue from the 1/2-cent sales tax it was to build capacity to take care of maintenance, to maintaining our roads. So I think those are at least where we can start, but we got to have the community conversation about how we're going to pay for it, because the money coming in now isn't sufficient to take care of. Pima County's problem is $300 million. The region's problem is over $600 million. It's going to take some additional revenues, and we need to see where people want to get those revenues.
What can be done to reduce property taxes, at least as it pertains to the Pima County portion of that bill?
I think Pima County is the only county. There are 15 counties in the state of Arizona. We're the only county that relies solely on property tax for general fund revenue. All the other counties have excise taxes, some form of sales tax, secondary districts like jails. We are the only ones with just property tax. I would like to see us take to the voters a ballot issue that gives us the permission to enact a 1/2-cent sales tax, with the caveat that the monies we get from that is used to reduce property taxes. But let's put the whole property tax thing, or the tax thing, in perspective. While we may have the highest property tax, if you look at the total tax burden, property tax, sales tax,
just a few more seconds,
special revenue districts, we are right in the middle. Maricopa residents pay more than we do, and when you look at total tax burden.
All right, thank you so much for coming in to talk about this. I also talked with Kim DeMarco this week about the issues facing Pima County. Ms. DeMarco, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start with kind of a broad question. Your website has a lot of information about the county's budget and specifically expenditures. So broadly, what needs to change?
Well, our county currently is $1.4 billion in debt. And that debt is more than twice the debt of all other Arizona counties combined. So we have to find a way to cut that budget. And until I'm looking at it, I cannot really give you specifics, but we have to look at cutting some of the unnecessary spending simply because we have certain things that the county is required to take care of. One of those things is the roads. And our roads right now are suffering. They're actually ranked among the worst in the country.
And your opponent, Supervisor Bronson, her campaign is focusing a lot on her past economic development efforts. What do you think about what she's done?
Well, there have been some businesses that have come in this year, and I'm excited about the businesses that are here. My issue, though, that I'm looking at is that a lot of these businesses that are coming in, a couple of them actually, are taxpayer-funded incentives, and those are not sustainable. We cannot continue to give businesses $15, $20 million to come to our county when in reality we need to be focusing on what really is what drives business, and that's reducing regulation, reducing fees, making the permitting process much easier, taking care of our roads and infrastructure, lowering property tax and business taxes.
On the note of taxes,
yes.
In the past few years, the state has made some decisions that shifted what were formerly state costs onto Pima County. Pima County has decided to shift those costs then to taxpayers. How do you think that the Board of Supervisors should approach the legislature to attempt to fend off that kind of action in future years?
Well, I think you have to get a rapport with the legislature and also with the governor. And even though I'm not elected yet, I am already setting up those avenues of information so that when the election happens and I become a supervisor, I can go to these people and I can talk with them immediately and tell them what our issues are. And believe me, they do know. So we need to set up a rapport with them so that we can explain our issues. We can explain that when we are given those breaks and get that money down here, that we will do what we say we're going to do with it.
You brought up roads before,
yes.
And this is a perennial issue for
yes.
any candidate in Pima County. You mentioned there's a constant need for more money for road repairs.
Right.
Where would you get the funding to do that?
Well, one, in cutting the budget, we're going to get some of the money there. The HERF funds, actually in the last 9 years, we've gotten $688 million in HERF funds. Now, you'll hear a lot that the HERF funds have been swept by the state. Actually, only about 7% of those funds have been swept. And about $20 million a year goes towards paying off 97 bond debt.
1997, the bond issue that voters approved.
Correct. So there's quite a bit of money there, and we just need to make sure that we direct that towards roads. The other option that we need to look at is the RTA, which is the Regional Transportation Authority. And we need to go to the legislature and request to use some of those monies for the roads. But we would do that in a manner where all the municipalities and the county down here would benefit from that. So everyone would benefit.
Just to clarify, the RTA money is all going to roads. You mean shifting some to road repair?
Road repair, correct.
Instead of construction?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. And then I want to ask about property tax rates. What can be done to reduce those as it pertains just to the county portion of the bill?
Right. So we have to, you know, it all stems on being able to cut the budget. We have to get rid of the unnecessary spending. We have to take care of the needs and not our wants in the county right now. Once we get everything taken care of, we reduce our debt, we get the roads taken care of, then of course we can look at getting some of those wants. But to do that, we have to be able to lower the budget, we have to cut the budget, we have to be able to bring those property taxes down, and it can be done. That's where most of the income comes from in this county, most of the revenue.
You have criticized the county's debt load, both in our interview and in your campaign.
Yes.
But we've also acknowledged the need to spend more money on infrastructure. So again, that balancing act, you're saying just by cutting other parts of the budget is how you would make enough money for infrastructure?
Well, no, it's a combination of several things. So it's cutting the budget. It's taking those HERF funds that right now the Board of Supervisors is saying that 50+ million on average per year is going towards administration. But nobody can really tell us what the administration is. So we need to redirect those funds to take care of the roads. And then again, the RTA. We need to approach them and we need to be able to use that money. And I believe that that's a possibility, a strong possibility.
People have said that this race, the District 3 Supervisors race, could be the tipping point, could be the deciding race in which party has the board majority. So presumably, if you win, there could be a Republican majority on the board. Presumably, if Ms. Bronson wins, there could be a Democratic majority on the board. Make your case for voters to bring in a Republican.
Well, you know, right now it's not about blue and red. Our roads are not blue and red issues. Our taxes are not blue and red issues. They are issues of every person in this county. And whether we have a Republican or a Democrat board, yes, my winning would probably make it a Republican board. We need to focus on making things better for the people in this county. We need to make things better for businesses so that businesses are more likely to come here. So we have to take care of business. My opponent has been in office for 20 years. And in 20 years, our debt's doubled, our roads are crumbling. We need to make a change. And I'm that change, and I know that I can get it done.
All right, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much, Andy. I appreciate it.
We now turn to the race in Pima County Supervisors District 1.
District 1 is on the northwest side of Pima County, from River Road to the northern county boundary, and roughly from I-10 west of the Catalina Mountains. Incumbent Republican Allie Miller seeks a second term. She has long argued that road work is the biggest issue in the county and wants to add $130 million a year for the next 5 years into regional road work. She also wants to extend the life of the Regional Transportation Authority, which is a sales tax-funded plan for roads. Miller would dedicate half of the money to road repair. She also wants to cut what she calls wasteful spending, to lower taxes, and encourage economic development. Democrat Brian Bickle is challenging Miller. He, too, says the county needs a dedicated revenue stream for road repair, with a priority on residential streets. He also wants to bring more jobs and new companies to Pima County and proposes a focus on aerospace, defense, and logistics industries.
We invited both candidates to join us for an interview. Supervisor Allie Miller did not respond to repeated requests. Here's my interview with Brian Bickle. Mr. Bickle, thanks for coming in.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me here.
I want to start with roads because that's one of the highest profile issues in the county for a lot of voters. You say you see a need for more residential road work specifically. How would your plan differ from Supervisor Miller's?
First of all, I don't think anybody, whether it's Supervisor Miller or her primary opponent, Mr. Winchester, or anybody else, has a good roads plan. They all have good roads funding plans. But what I would like to see is the county come up with a plan where they survey all the roads, determine what their condition is, good, fair, poor, failed, and come up with a timeline that says, this is when we're going to do this particular road, this is what we're going to do to that road, and actually make it available on the internet. So if a homeowner wanted to go in and find out what the status of his road or a road that he travels on a regular basis is, he could look it up, understanding that it's a living document and extenuating circumstances might cause that plan to change. But I think until we have a good handle on what needs to be done, figuring out how to pay for it is kind of putting the cart before the horse.
I'm still going to ask about that cart, though. How would you pay for it?
There's a lot of options that I think need to be explored. We've proposed a sales tax similar to RTA. I think that's a viable option. A sales tax not part of the RTA program is another viable option. I think the only non-viable option out there is a property tax because of the tax inequity caused by the fact that the incorporated citizens pay to fix unincorporated roads. So other than that, I think anything's on the table. It's just a question of what's available.
Now moving on to economic development, what can the county do to better attract the industries that you want to attract, aerospace, defense, logistics, and the things that are already in the county's plans?
I think we need to keep asking. There are a number of industries at any given time. There are companies that are looking to relocate for a number of reasons. I think we need to constantly be a player in the game. We may elicit responses from a number of companies and get one or two. It's kind of like recruiting people into the military. You've got to talk to a lot of people before you find one that's willing to enlist. And I think it's the same thing with recruiting companies to the community. I think we need to focus our efforts in certain areas, aerospace, biosciences, export logistics, but anybody should be considered an opportunity that's waiting to happen. And You talk to everybody. I think the important thing is we need to be competitive in that marketplace, but we don't need to break the bank in order to get a particular company to come here, which I think is indicative of what happened with Tesla. We just finally got to the point where we said, okay, we've given you the best deal we can give you, and they opted to go somewhere else because they got a better deal.
There are places that are offering better deals, as that indicates. So how would you compete in that environment?
I think you do the best you can with what you have. I think we can be penny wise and pound foolish and overextend the local economy and end up getting a company to come here, but finding out that we're worse off because of the economic promises that we made and we find difficulty keeping. I think it's important that we know what the resources are that we have available and what the limitations of those resources are, and not to exceed those limitations. And if we don't win, we don't win.
Key to any issue we discuss about the county is who's making the decisions. And your website says that your plan for the county includes responsive leadership. What does that mean?
I think we need to involve everybody, and I think the Caterpillar deal was a great example of what happened there. We had the state involved, we had the Arizona Commerce Authority involved, we had the city of Tucson, Rio Nuevo, Pima County. Everybody was a player at the table. I think we have to get past the internal divisions that we've had within the county as far as municipalities and the county and the state and our neighboring counties. Anything that we do anywhere in the county is going to benefit everybody in the county and probably the counties that border us as well, and the state as a whole. So I think we need to be responsive to what's out there. I think we need to be aggressive in recruiting people, but I don't think we need to be foolish in that process either.
You're running as a Democrat in a district that's been traditionally, or in the last several terms, held by Republicans. What will you do to convince voters to switch that representation?
Looking at the race that I'm involved in, the incumbent is a founder of the Tea Party Patriots. She readily admits that, and I think her position is based on political ideology to the point that it excludes any other options as far as she's concerned. I like to think that I'm a lot more pragmatic, a lot more practical, and I'm willing to look at everybody's point of view. I've had experience negotiating on the military side with both our government and foreign governments, so I'm comfortable in that arena. As a retired hospital chief executive, I've negotiated with physicians in the recruitment process, medical suppliers, equipment suppliers, so I'm comfortable in that arena, and I understand that anytime you're negotiating with somebody, it's a give and take situation. It can't be all take and no give.
All right, thank you so much for coming in.
You're welcome, thank you.
Tucson Electric Power has asked the Arizona Corporation Commission to increase its residential power rates. Zach Ziegler reports on the progress of the rate case so far and public reaction.
Corporation Commission staff members spent the last 2 weeks hearing testimony from interested parties in Tucson Electric Power's rate case. In November of 2015, TEP asked the commissioners to approve a new rate structure for what it charges residential customers. The typical customer's bill would go up by about $8.15 a month. Most of that increase would come in the flat fees the utility charges customers to connect to the electrical grid. The proposal originally included adjustments to the rate the utility pays for excess solar power generated by residential customers' rooftop panels, but that change has been moved to a different rate case. That will allow the new customer fees to progress through the commission, while the net metering changes await the value of solar study commissioned by the regulatory board.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So Zach Ziegler joins us for more. Let's dip into a little bit of the background now. Why did TEP ask for the increase and what does it pay for?
Well, a big part of this is, from what TEP is saying, is that they need to invest more in infrastructure and also in going to greener sources of energy. They talk about upgrading the grid and doing work such as that, and then also decreasing their reliance on coal power, going to more natural gas, and also pushing for more solar. There was recently Arizona Corporation Commission Chairman Doug Little suggested that maybe Arizona's goal for solar power should now be 30% by 2030. That was originally 15% by 25. So TEP says they're already actually aiming for that higher goal, and they want to once again get back to where they are exceeding that number. These things are all kind of playing in as to why they say they need to charge customers a little more.
So they're spending the money to change the infrastructure and the power sources.
Yes, upgrade, and that's always a big problem with power is a lot of times a lot of power that is generated is lost in the transmission process. Upgrades can help solve that problem.
And you went to a public meeting recently about this. What was the response?
Big surprise when you talk about asking people for almost $100 a year extra, they get a little defensive. But the majority of people were actually there talking about solar power and net metering, but there were plenty of people there, those who work with low-income individuals, those who are on fixed income were there saying, this is a big increase to us. You are asking for a lot, and this will very well be a problem.
Do we know yet whether there would be an additional helping source for the low-income people with the increase, or has that been decided?
That hasn't quite been decided. That kind of proves to be the issue at this point. And another thing that needs to be discussed is will there be further need for assistance and expansion of TEP's low-income assistance programs?
You mentioned in the setup piece that we just saw that the rooftop solar proposals were removed from this other rate increase proposal. What's the status of that conversation or that consideration?
It was removed so that it could be considered later. There's currently a study going on called the Value of Solar study being commissioned by the Corporation Commission. I talked actually with Commissioner Andy Tobin earlier this week for a radio interview, and he told me they're hoping to have something on that in October. That would basically help set net metering rates across the state. So for TEP, for their sibling company UNS, and also for APS, all three, as well as SRP, and any other electric, the cooperatives, the smaller electric companies, they've all been asking for changes to net metering policies in recent years, and there's been a lot of debate back and forth. This is kind of the hope to finally end that debate of how much an electric utility has to pay customers for their excess rooftop solar.
And that definition you just gave, that's the definition of net metering. How
Yes.
much the TEP would pay for rooftop solar customers who are generating more than they use, right?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Do we have any idea what the effective date for those changes would be?
The way that things are now being structured, an old rate case from UNS Energy had asked for a retroactive date, and that became the first time that there was precedent that the Corporation Commission said, no, we are not going to allow you to change net metering rates retroactively, even if it's the date when you first put forth this proposal. No, it will be on the date that we set, which from what I have heard is most likely going to be the date that a decision is made. So that's big news for anyone who's considering solar. For a long time, TEP customers were having to kind of consider if they were going to be in kind of a limbo gray area because there was a retroactive date attached to the rate case. Now, that's not so. Those who are connected to the grid before this are grandfathered in, and grandfathered in rates will not be changed.
Do we have any idea when either the standard fixed rate TEP case that we talked about in the beginning or this solar question will be finally decided by the Corporation Commission?
Well, to go on solar, we have some idea. Commissioner Tobin said there is real hope that this will be, at least the study will be in by October. Now, how long it takes to actually act on that
And hold hearings.
and everything past that is a whole nother story. On TEP's rate case, we are working our way through these final stages of hearings. After this is not actually the Corporation Commissioners who hear these cases. This is Corporation Commission staff. They will go off and basically put together a proposal for the commissioners. It will then be handed to the commissioners, and they will decide how to vote based on staff recommendations. The timetable on this, it's very much so up in the air.
All right, thanks for the update, Zach. Before we go, this note about a special live presentation next week from Arizona Public Media and the Community Foundation for Southern Arizona. Community Interactive Stories from the Border, featuring a panel discussion by journalists who cover the borderlands, moderated by Maria Hinojosa, executive producer and host of NPR's Latino USA. The program is Thursday, September 29th at the Fox Theater downtown, beginning at 6:30. It's free, but tickets are needed to reserve a space. Sign up for them and get more information on our website. Thanks for watching.